Welcome to FYI, the For-Your Innovation podcast. This show offers an intellectual discussion on technologically enabled disruption, because investing in innovation starts with understanding it. To learn more, visit arc-invest.com.
ARC Invest is a registered investment advisor focused on investing in disruptive innovation. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. It does not constitute, either explicitly or implicitly, any provision of services or products by ARC. All statements made regarding companies or securities are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARC or podcast guests, and are not endorsements or recommendations by ARC to buy, sell, or hold any security. Clients of ARC Investment Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
Bitcoin is a relatively new asset class, and the market for Bitcoin is subject to rapid changes and uncertainty. Bitcoin is largely unregulated, and Bitcoin investments may be more susceptible to fraud and manipulation than more regulated investments. Bitcoin is subject to unique and substantial risks, including significant price volatility, lack of liquidity, and theft. Bitcoin is subject to rapid price swings, including as a result of actions and statements by influencers and the media, changes in the supply and demand of Bitcoin, and other factors. There is no assurance that Bitcoin will maintain its value over the long term. ARC strongly encourages any investor considering an investment in Bitcoin or any other digital asset to consult with a financial professional before investing. All statements made regarding Bitcoin are strictly beliefs and points of view held by ARC and or podcast guests, and are not recommendations by ARC to buy, sell, or hold Bitcoin. Historical results are not indications of future results.
Welcome everyone to today's Bitcoin Brainstorm. I'm your host, Rod Roudi, co-founder of Bitcoin Park, a community-supported campus right here in Nashville, Tennessee, focused on grassroots freedom tech adoption and a home for Bitcoiners to work, learn, collaborate, and build. We are now on episode number 11. And now this episode is a bit different from our usual Bitcoin Brainstorms, where we typically bring on a number of different guests and focus our discussions around one topic related to Bitcoin. This time, we have one incredible guest, and we explored a variety of different fascinating subjects. For this episode, I sit down with Cathie Wood, CEO and CIO of ARK Invest, when we were both together in Austin, Texas, at the Bitcoin Commons for an awesome event hosted by Bakkt and Unchained Capital. We begin our discussion by delving into Cathie's personal history and her profound passion for Bitcoin. We touch on how her understanding of monetary policy was significantly influenced by Dr. Laer. We discuss Bitcoin education initiatives, and then we broaden our lens to explore the global perspective on Bitcoin. Cathie offers her insights on how Bitcoin is reshaping the financial landscape around the world, and so much more. Again, a special thank you to Yassine, Cathie, and the entire ARK Invest team for their continued support to make this all possible. This conversation is packed with valuable perspectives and insights, so let's just jump right into it.
Thank you again. We got a tight little timeline, so I think I'm just going to jump right into it. Can I ask you a personal question to start?
Sure, Rod.
Okay. Why do you love Bitcoin so much?
Wow. It occurs to me as I've thought about my education. And not even before that, in the 70s, when I was growing up in Southern California, my father, Irish immigrant, was an engineer, but had no education, so really wasn't well paid. And so really we were on a tight budget. And I remember we went through that inflation of the 70s. And I remember my father coming in, and that's really how I learned what inflation was, by listening to my father. And it put a real constraint on our budget, what was going on. We're seeing a bit of an echo of it in the last few years, especially when you think about food. And then Art Laer is my professor at USC, and he starts talking about this inflation. Yeah. And going off the gold exchange standard in 1971. And I was starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I ended up, Art Laer is known for his fiscal policy, So Laffer curve, right? You may have heard of that. But he is a monetary scholar. His mentor was Robert Mundell, who won a Nobel Prize for his monetary theory. And he's as passionate about monetary theory as fiscal policy. And so I grew to love monetary policy. I started my career and moved to New York 1980, and we were in the middle of this we're double-digit inflation and interest rates. And we had Paul Volcker on monetary policy. We had Ronald Reagan come in. And, I was looking at the damage to the financial markets that inflation and interest rates were doing, not only to personal life, but to financial markets, and just how broad-based this mistake was and how many people it was affecting. And then, really, because of what I was doing at the time, I started in economics, had to make a call on inflation and interest rates. And so, again, I became, at that very early age, maniacally focused on monetary policy. And so I think what Bitcoin, when we did our first paper on Bitcoin in 2015, so we're going to look at any disruptive innovation. We actually started in 2011 at our prior firm, but started the firm at ARC at 2014, and we said, should this be one of our platforms? And we didn't break it out in the beginning. We had Next Generation Internet as a platform. And then two things happened. We did the white paper with Art Laffer in collaboration with him. And he said to me, wait a minute. I've been waiting for this. I thought he was going to criticize and throw the bums out, in terms of the kind of paper we wrote. But he read it and he said, wait a minute. If this is what I think, this is what I've been waiting for since 1971 when they closed the gold window in the United States. And he was in D.C. when that happened. He was mortified when it happened. And he is feeling now that he can get redemption with Bitcoin. So I think his everything that my life experience, what he taught us, and my own experience in my career have caused me to love Bitcoin. This is an answer to a lot of the world's problems.
So I'm going to ask Parker Lewis, do you know where Dr. Laffer lives by chance? You don't? Cathie, do you know where he lives?
Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm just throwing that out there, just in case. Dr. Laffer is an amazing person. Yeah. It was he came on our podcast, and I've spent some time with him. And that's awesome that he was one of the impetus for you guys to invest, I believe, in 2015, to write the white paper in 2017.
Well, we wrote the first white paper in 2015. Okay. Could Bitcoin serve the three roles of money? The second, in collaboration with Coinbase, when it was in Series B, Bitcoin ringing the bell for a new asset class. And there began our journey. And I have to give credit to Chris Berniski for those first two. Do you know Chris Berniski? You all? Yeah, he started at ARC. He fell down the rabbit hole. And, we couldn't pull him out. He was Next Generation Internet, and he said, no, I want to do this.
Yeah.
And here we are.
So I'll say this, with all these ETFs and a lot of these folks, it seems like from my point of view, they're coming into the game in the last year or two. Mm-hmm. But you've been in it since 2011 at the former company, then 2014, 2015. How do you maintain this level of conviction for Bitcoin?
Well, it's only been growing, right? Okay, so we've done, research is key to everything. So Yassine El-Mandra, whom you know, and co-host of the Bitcoin Brainstorm. It is
really fun that I got to say my co-host is up here with me, the Bitcoin Brainstorm. By the way, anyone listen to our podcast, Bitcoin Brainstorm? Let's go. Thank you, Parker.
Yeah, Bitcoin Brainstorm. Let me just tell you, I every time I have the privilege of being on Bitcoin Brainstorm, because Rod and Yassine bring on people who are making this world happen. And, we're interviewing them, and I'm coming from lesser knowledge, but I can make more connections, right? I've seen a lot going on in the world, and I can tell you almost every Bitcoin Brainstorm, I come out saying, wow. You too. You say you do it literally, wow, but I'm like, oh man, this is so important. People need to, if you haven't listened to Bitcoin Brainstorm, do. Maybe you already know all this stuff, but your eyes will be opened in a way that might have been. And now you asked me a question. And
so for example, for me in 2011, people said, "Hey Rod, you should get into this Bitcoin thing." And I was like, "Okay, how do I get it?" Go to Craigslist and then go meet this guy in an alley. And I was like, "Yeah, go fuck yourself." And then 2013, 2014, I think it was November 2014, I got a team in New York that I was managing. All the young kids were like, "Hey Rod, you got to get into this Bitcoin thing." I opened up a Coinbase account, didn't do anything with it. And it was like $10. And then in 2017, I want to say, I logged back in and my $10 was like $500. And I'm like, what the heck? I got to get into and learn more about this. Yeah. So I'm on the left side of the bell curve. You're on the right side of the bell curve where you kind of got it early with Dr. Laer and a lot of other folks. I'm just curious about how you remain to have that kind of conviction through all of these different cycles. You've been investing in disruptive technology for so long that how do you maintain that with Bitcoin?
Well, I think, and one of the reasons I mentioned Bitcoin Brainstorm is, the more people that I meet who are making this happen, the more my conviction grows. 2019, I had the pleasure of meeting, were you there? I don't know. You look familiar. I had the pleasure of meeting core developers at a confab in Uruguay. And I met very young developers, so very young developers, to most seasoned. And the most seasoned and the young seem to have the same kind of love for monetary theory that I do. And that increased my confidence. It's really the people who are building this ecosystem, the first global, digital, decentralized, rules-based, critical monetary system in history. That's a very big idea. And that was what Art said at the time. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what it is, but it's also a technology, and it is a new asset class. There is, no matter what other crypto asset you talk about it, no other one has those three. Bitcoin, especially because it is the global monetary system. It's very exciting. And in terms of, that's the conviction side of it, but in terms of the inspiration side of it, this is going to transform people's lives. That's what keeps me so passionate about it.
I love it. I asked you before how you stay so vibrant. You got another call at 6:30, then another call at 8 o'clock tonight. I'm like, those are past my even bedtime. So I'm like, how do you have all this energy? But I digress a bit. You mentioned Paraguay. Uruguay. And you mentioned core devs. We're not going to open up the can of worms around false development this time. We're going to talk about that in July.
Okay.
But we may learn about multiplication and revenue versus profit in July.
Yes.
But there is one thing around regulation. I wish Senator Haggerty, he had another engagement or he was going to be here. He did a panel at Consensus around CBDCs as well as Gensler. There's been a lot of talk with Tom Emmer last night. Whoever was at the Coin Center dinner, he gave a speech around Gensler. We've talked about Gensler for a bit. Yep. Instead of talking about the U.S., you were just in El Salvador with President Bukele. Mm-hmm. Maybe from a global competitive standpoint, what did you learn that was interesting to share with this audience?
Well, President Bukele and I would say his brother. I also met Ibrahim, his brother, very, very important duo, I would say. Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, economic reform, education reform. He's going to do it. He's going to be inaugurated for the second time, June 1st, so this week. And he's a man on the move. The GDP of El Salvador is only $30 billion. the average income of an earner there is $450 a month, right? From that low of a base, Art Laffer was with me as well, and David Puel, my colleague back then, back there. Where's David? Oh, there he is, way back there. We were in El Salvador, and from that lower base, I truly think, given his focus and desire to pull his country out of what had been years and years of civil war and then gang warfare after that. He's now put all of them in jail. Now he can get down to business. From such a low base, I really believe he will increase GDP tenfold during his 5-year term, based on those four variables. And the El Salvador was it was pegged to the dollar. Their is it peso? I forget what the currency is, but it was pegged to the dollar already. So they had that going for them. But he felt so strongly about Bitcoin transforming El Salvador and really making it an oasis in Latin America. He's putting in, and Art Laffer is going to make sure this happens. He's already put in some great tax incentives. No capital. I mean, anyone interested in doing Bitcoin in El Salvador.
Hold on, we're recruiting him for Nashville, Tennessee, not El Salvador.
Well, so Mark Seal there, right, is living in El Salvador right now. He's moved. He's AI and crypto or Bitcoin. So, but the incentive system he's putting in place is going to create an oasis for Bitcoin and AI. And those are two of the biggest, most profound innovation platforms in history. So he's going to make history.
Every time I talk to you, you get amped up around Bitcoin and AI. And then we always then you go on this riff around convergence. And it's really gotten me thinking about a number of different things as well. So even on the El Salvador side, how do you think about all of these disruptive technologies, especially with Bitcoin, converging together from an investment point of view, from a life point of view? I'm just curious, some of those thoughts.
It's very interesting. So we have centered the firm's research around disruptive innovation. So innovation platforms that meet 3 criteria, and I can get into them if you want, but the 5 are robotics, energy storage, artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and multi-omics sequencing in the life science space. And each one of those is moving into its own S-curve, moving into prime time in terms of adoption. And I think the reason the world is going to feel chaotic, even to us in some sense, we've been disappointed by some earnings results because, in the AI world, things are happening that we wouldn't have expected. So it's moving very quickly. And I think there is, if you look at consumer sentiment metrics out there, you'll see the consumer is kind of down. Consumers not feeling very. Now, I think a lot of it is where the price level is in the economy, but a lot of it also is if you look at surveys of people making $100,000 or more, their fear of losing their jobs is moving up dramatically here because of AI. And if unemployment follows with this line, it will end up somewhere in the 6 to 7% range in the next year or so. So that's something that's happening that's unsettling. This is much like the late 1800s, early 1900s. Telephone, electricity, and internal combustion engine going to change the world completely. And society was very uncertain, unstable. There was a lot of angst back then, and I think there is so. Innovation, all of the innovation I'm talking about has huge ramifications for wealth creation and standards of living, right? Productivity gains. We think productivity is going to absolutely boom here, and we think real GDP growth could appreciate from where it's been in the last 125 years, real GDP growth from 3% at a compound annual rate, with China bringing up the rear recently. We think that will go to 6 to 8% during the next 5 to 10 years. Most people think that's nuts. The other side of it, though, is this is highly deflationary. All of these technologies are deflationary. And that's why Bitcoin fits right into this new world as the payments ecosystem. So, but in terms of the convergence, so each one into its own S-curve, and these are massive growth opportunities, just massive opportunities. And so what do we have here? We have S-curves feeding S-curves because of this convergence. That's what you're feeling. And so it's going to create for these converged platforms super exponential growth. And when our chief futurist, Brett, put that into our Big Ideas 2024, I said, most people in our business, this is the equity business for the most part, do not even understand exponential growth. So exponential growth, if you're at a decent growth rate, means you'll sustain that growth rate instead of law of large numbers decaying the growth rate, right? Super exponential means you're not only going to sustain a growth rate, but it's going to accelerate because of these convergences. So that's what's exciting about this. And just to give you a few examples away from Bitcoin AI, and we can get into that in a moment, AI is the biggest catalyst in all of this. It is going to catalyze more innovation and speed it up more than any other innovation out there. So a couple of ideas. First, autonomous taxi networks. So robotaxis, autonomous. Tesla, largest AI project on Earth. It is the convergence of robotics. Autonomous vehicles are robots. Energy storage, they will be electric. And sometimes that's controversial, but it all has to do with costs. Electric's going to be much cheaper than gas-powered. And I know I'm in Texas, too. So anyway, 3, artificial intelligence will be powered by AI. So that's going to move the needle, right? It's also going to there's also going to be, as a result of it, a lot of creative destruction. That gets to sort of this unease and so forth. Another one, just in terms of profound ramifications, is in the healthcare space. So multi-omic sequencing, so not just DNA, it's RNA, proteins, methylation, epigenetics is complicated. Anyway, the convergence of those two, so artificial intelligence and sequencing with CRISPR gene editing, is going to cure disease. And we've had the first approval of a drug, a therapy created this way, 2 of them actually, in US, UK, Europe, for beta thalassemia and sickle cell. They were absolutely incurable. You couldn't even treat the symptoms. Now these people, 1 edit to the genome, now that we know what these 6 billion bits of code are, and what's normal and what's not normal, editing 1 abnormal gene cured these people. Cured. So that's how profound and exciting this world is going to be. It's going to transform healthcare. And then in terms of AI and Bitcoin, well, I think, our Bitcoin brainstorm on that convergence, when roast beef, anybody know who roast beef is? Yeah, everybody knows who roast beef. So he was, I think, in Africa at that moment as we were doing brainstorm, describing how the convergence of Bitcoin and AI was completely redefining really labor, the distribution of labor, right?
Yeah, Paul Itoy, I think, as well as at Stackworks, he was explaining in Guatemala as well as El Salvador and a lot of these other countries as well, and especially these AI agents. What do they call them? Microtasking, or something along those lines. How many people in the audience, by the way, are parents? Real quick, or show of hands. Okay, good, because Cathie, you know I'm a father of 4, and I'm going to just ask a selfish question here.
Yes.
Like, what should I be teaching my kids, or what should I be pointing the kids to be learning with all this disruption, this creative, not destruction, but also wealth opportunity? Yeah. What should they be learning?
Well, you should focus them on disruptive innovation. Get them on the right side of change. That's the most important thing you have to do as a parent from an education point of view. And I feel so strongly about this that we launched 3-4 years ago. We now call it ARC Education Initiative. ARC's research made age appropriate. We just got to St. Pete 2.5 years ago. Made age appropriate is the 6th grade science curriculum throughout Pinellas County, 70,000 students. So they're learning, yeah. And we took, what was that? Oh, okay. All right, fantastic. Yes, and we took to El Salvador with us, 2 books, one on Bitcoin, one on AI, targeted at 6th graders. For President Bukele. And he just jumped. He said, I will pay anything. I want to get into that program. That is how Florida had something to prove on education because it had one of the worst track records in the country. Now it's really coming up and because it's willing to experiment and try. And we were outsiders, total outsiders. And we came in the public school. This is the public school system. 100, and we'll be throughout the middle school. So your daughter will get it throughout the middle school. Yeah. And we hope to go from toddler through high school, but getting young people inspired, especially, middle school is such an important age for young people. This is a big fork in the road for a lot of young people. It's like there are a lot of social things going on, of course, but you inspire them. And I'll just give you a quick story. During COVID, we went to a place called Jericho Partnership in Danbury, Connecticut. When I was still living in Connecticut, the president said, I am going to lose these young people. They're from very low socioeconomic homes, very difficult circumstances, and I'm going to lose them because they can't come in now. Will you do something? Will you help me? And so we did 2 6-part seminars. One was on drones, one was on 3D printing. And on the drone, so at the end of that 6-part seminar, I was able to say to these young people, you know what? You know more about drones than 98% of the people in the world. Now, did you enjoy Sam the Drone Man? So Sam Corris is our analyst. Did he inspire you? Go follow him on, at that time, Twitter. Go follow him and go follow who he is following, because a lot of this, that when they start learning about something, and we see this with Bitcoin too, when they start learning about something, they become voracious. They actually want to become, the leaders of their class in the knowledge of any particular breakthrough science that others are not really talking about. It's becoming cool. So very exciting and such an important moment in history to be doing this.
So you have a whole group that's kind of doing on the education route. And by the way, for more of the adults in the room, you guys have Bitcoin Monthly, your research. You have a whole research team as well. Yes,
4 people working on the research. We put out blogs, white papers. We are going. I announced this yesterday
with Peter McCormack, that guy.
Yeah,
it's a little shifty, in my opinion.
Okay. But I did announce one of the projects, and David Bukele is, I think, leading it. If I'm not mistaken, Yassine is technically leading it, but David's doing most of the work, I would say. Anyway, it's on decentralization. This is a very important topic, especially with ETFs in the mix now, and with mining, the questions about centralization around mining and all of that. So we're developing an index around decentralization to keep us all honest, right? We need to present red flags or yellow flags when they're occurring. Half the solution is understanding the problem.
I love that. All right, let's think about a little bit more in the future. My 4 kids are now in high school. Oh my God, they're going to go to college, we're 10, 15, 20 years out. What does the world look like? How are you, if capital allocators in the room, other than just pounding and buying, using their entire cash position and buying Bitcoin, obviously, but how do you look at, you mentioned a number of different ways in the future, but like in 15, 20 years from now, what does the future look like? And how can we take more advantage of that, if you will?
Well, in terms of, you're talking about in terms of investing and getting on the right side of change. What is so interesting, I hope you don't mind my talking about this, but I'm on the warpath here on this particular topic. So for those of you who invest in the equity market, you might notice that there are a few stocks that are taking all the oxygen out of the room. They're called the Mag 6, right? And we've been hurt badly because we've been pulling away from them because of truly disruptive innovation. Now, they might, they will enjoy the fruits of innovation, but the companies we're investing in are not in benchmarks. And no one's paying attention to them because they're not, when I say no one, I mean in the traditional asset management world, if a stock is not in one of the broad-based benchmarks, they kind of don't want to follow it. The benchmark is the bogey, right? And so I believe we are witnessing the most massive misallocation of capital in history. I really believe that. Now, most people disagree with me on that in the financial markets. So that remains to be seen. So the one thing I would do is, sure, if you're in a very well diversified portfolio, as most advisors would suggest, you'd want some of the broad-based benchmarks and exposure to some of that. But if the world is going to be as disrupted as we think it's going to be, you really do need to be exposed to those companies, and they're down and out right now. Again, they had, and we certainly did in 2020. We had a massive run, and now our portfolios are at about a quarter of where they were at their peaks. That's how down and out they are. Wow. And just in portfolios where we cannot hold ARKB or hold that's really the only instrument, or GBTC. We hold Coinbase. We hold Robinhood, Block for Cash App, and everything Jack and team are doing around Bitcoin, and even a little SoFi. We're looking for the digital wallet. That's going to be one of the biggest opportunities out there. And so that's the kind of smattering you'll get in our portfolios. You will not see those stocks in traditional portfolios. They're just too scared of them. Interesting.
So capital allocation as it relates to equities. I'm also interested now we've seen a lot of announcements around private companies as well as publicly traded companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Anyone else hold an ETF in this room? Bitcoin ETF? Okay, good. All the other hardcore people don't do the ETF.
Self-custody is great too.
That's 100%. Yeah. How do you see this adoption curve as it relates to on the institutional side? And you mentioned President Bukele, they're buying Bitcoin, so nation state adoption of Bitcoin. How do you see all these different factors playing in? And it seems like they're sucking up a lot of the Bitcoin supply. What does this do for the price? I know you made a bearish prediction of like $250,000 or $500,000 recently, but yeah. I'm just curious.
It is interesting. I think President Bukele is really smart because emerging markets, what is the death knell for an emerging market? It is when they run out of reserves, capital flight, running out of reserves. And so if these emerging markets put Bitcoin on their balance sheet and it's appreciating as their own currency is falling apart, that is a beautiful hedge. And they're probably going to increase their allocation over time as they appreciate that this is a risk. And look what the trend of Bitcoin has been. Look at what the trend of most fiat currencies has been. right? Relative to anything, the dollar or gold, and even the dollar relative to gold has been, a terrible investment over since the Fed came into being. So I think emerging markets are going to start, but people inside of emerging markets need this insurance policy, and you need. And I used to say this, and then I met KG, I used to say all you need is an internet connection and a smartphone, and you have your insurance policy. You can buy Bitcoin. Now, I guess with not a SIM card, you can access Bitcoin. That's marvelous. Marvelous. Anyway, insurance policy against confiscation of wealth. Confiscation of wealth, that's inflation for sure. It's outright confiscation as well of wealth, as the prince's, MBS's cousins, I guess, learned the hard way at the Ritz Hotel. So wouldn't it have been nice to have that key, right? They had a quarter of their wealth taken away, something like that. So the insurance, the way we have gotten to our bull price target, and our bull price target, the probability on that has increased with the ETF significantly. And
what is that bull price target?
$1.5 million.
Let's go.
2030. Let's go. Yeah. So there are three major assumptions we're making there, that Bitcoin really becomes half the size of the gold ETFs, right? Or the
it's like
gold
$13 trillion as their market cap.
That. Gold investments. So half that size. And the interesting recent statistic there, David gave me this the other day, is that if you look at 13F filings for the first quarter, this is mostly hedge funds we're talking about. For every hedge fund putting funds into a gold ETF or gold, there were 10 putting them into the new Bitcoin ETFs. That's pretty big, right? So that's our first assumption.
Yeah.
The second is back to the emerging markets. If you look at global money supply and you take away the big four, maybe you shouldn't, but let's take away US, Europe, UK, and Japan out of the global money supply. If you assume that the rest of the money supply, that 10% of it is really reallocated to Bitcoin, it's really the money supply, right? And it could be through treasury, it could be through the treasuries of companies. It could be individuals trying to protect themselves from, destruction of wealth and purchasing power. We're assuming only 10% of that residual goes to Bitcoin. So these are conservative assumptions, I would say, right? And then the third is the institutional. These are the major ones. There are others. There's remittances and so forth. But so institutional involvement, we assume that 6.5% of all financial assets are allocated to Bitcoin. So in global asset allocation, this does include real estate and commodities and, gold and everything, but 6%. And the way we got to that number is that's, maximizing the Sharpe ratio, return per unit of risk, is maximized. And really, volatility is not a consideration. In that study, if you really care about it, you'd probably want to allocate 2.5%, but 6.5%. So.
I'm 100% right now. How's my portfolio? Real quick, a time check, Parker. Or how are we doing? Maybe we'll do one more question. Perfect. This has been awesome, Cathie. Always, this is so much fun. You touched on in 2019, and by the way. Search in your favorite podcast app, ARK Invest. We actually have a dedicated playlist, the kind team at ARK Invest, on their YouTube channel, Bitcoin Brainstorm. They also syndicate the podcasts on the Bitcoin Park podcast feed if you just want to listen to that as well. That's my Matt Odell in me. He told me just to show that, like and subscribe. And the importance of FOSS development. You had this meeting and you're inspired by all these folks. And I know this has been like a topic of conversation. And in July, we're really going to dig in deep to that. We got a number of amazing guests lined up, and we're going to have a number of amazing announcements. But I'm just curious, at a high level, how do you think about FOSS development and Bitcoin development?
Yeah, so at that Uruguayan confab, I came away to the team and said, okay, we have to think about this. We need to figure out the right way to become a part of this movement, and we feel like in a way we're a part of the Bitcoin community, but becoming a part of the movement, really, So we have, it's 5 years later, you'd say, okay, what took you so long? Well, we thought there would be a Bitcoin ETF, right? And we thought that would be the time. And what happened? 11 were approved the same day. And the fees were not 60 basis points where we thought they were going to be, but 21 in our case. And so we're not making any money on this. And we're fine with that because if you think about it, Bitcoin is a public good. It is the financial superhighway, so a public good. And so what we feel is something important for us to do is to maximize access. So to that 21 basis points is helping us do that, maximize access. It's not helping with FOSS. What is the F?
Free and open source software.
Oh, I knew what the rest of it was. Got it. Okay. So Plan B, we do have a Plan B. We have private funds. And so we'll revolve around that in some way that we will disclose in July.
Perfect. I'll conclude here in a second, but let's open it up for a Q&A. Maybe a couple people got questions.
So recently we saw Wisconsin pension fund buy $160 million, partly BlackRock, partly Grayscale. I'm pretty focused. I mentioned to you just briefly, I'm pretty focused on helping the state pensions allocate to the Bitcoin ETF. Just wondering how much of your focus is spent on that time, on that space. I saw also that you had been at the SFOF previously before as well too. So we were there. We were there last time, and we'll be there in Alaska as well. So just curious, how much you're looking into that space as a place for allocation.
So it's interesting. Some state treasuries have come to us and said, yeah, and the treasurers who probably want to become governors, they are Bitcoin advocates, and they want to put it into their treasuries. Very conservative bunch of people. I don't know how much of that is going to happen. What you saw from Wisconsin is more likely to happen. Now, Wisconsin uses, I'm so sad, I thought they also invested in ARKB, didn't they? Just the two? Okay, I thought they had done, a number have done ARKB. We've been in the mix as well. So Wisconsin does use our active equity ETFs tactically. They never come to us and speak about them. This is a tactical move for them, tactical allocation. And my guess is that's how they're looking at the Bitcoin ETFs right now. I might be wrong on that. I've been surprised they've used our ETFs, but I think it's in the same spirit. Our ETFs act, I'd like to say that they're at an all-time high, which they're not anywhere near, as I told you. But
my wife will be happy.
I do believe that right now they're using it tactically, and maybe to make sure that they get this new, if they are buying into this new asset class, into the thinking of the people who are working at the pension fund, because these are very conservative institutions and they don't do anything risky. So that was interesting. So, but when you say new asset class, kind of a light bulb goes on. Okay, maybe I should look at this, because what does a new asset class mean? It means that if you allocate to this new asset, take from whatever, all other assets, allocate to this one, because the correlation of returns is low relative to other assets, then the return per unit of risk is going to go up over time. Okay? So what does that mean? Okay, if one pension fund puts it in, it's signaling to all these other state pension funds, we're doing this. This is a new asset class. If it is a new asset class, and it's going to increase our returns per unit of risk, we're going to beat you. We're going to have better returns than you. So I think it is going to spread. I don't know how quickly. These are a conservative bunch of people. Some of it might depend on price here and volatility and all of that as these things go. But I do think that is another reason corporate pension funds are going to do the same thing.
Competition's a good thing. Parker makes me better. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, next question. I'm going to turn to Connor, who is on Senator Lummis's staff.
Yes.
Senator Lummis is doing great work in D.C. to be an advocate for Bitcoin, and Connor himself is doing a lot of stuff in D.C. as well. And
she was a guest on Bitcoin Brainstorm.
That's right.
Well.
Yeah, so thank you. This is a fantastic conversation. So I guess kind of piggybacking off that last one, thinking through, the United States currently has, 5,000 metric tons of gold in Fort Knox. Do you think, we should have a similar sort of strategic reserve, like a Fort Nakamoto? And do you think that this should be something
Great question.
we should be thinking about critically?
You can put on your Dr. Laer hat as well as your Cathie Wood hat. I'm curious.
No, I absolutely do think that we should, for the same reason that I'm saying it's great for El Salvador, right? I do. Now, should it be equal to gold, which is our bull case in terms of institutional asset managers? I obviously think it would be much more sensible. This plays three roles: global monetary system, technology, and new asset class. So I would put more in Fort Knox then, because those are three insurance policies right there, right? Mm-hmm.
It'd be really great if we knew somebody that knew the next president of the United States. But I digress. Next question.
All right, next question right here.
Hey, Cathie, thanks for coming out.
Yes.
So one of your big themes is convergence, and the two technologies we're really excited about are AI and Bitcoin, and both of them a lot of compute. Sorry. Are there any, let's say, opportunities in the public market that might be meeting that need, because they both kind of converge at the electrical line, right, at the grid? Are you guys, is ARC looking into any opening up, like you're saying, opening up opportunity or access to Bitcoin, but are there any public opportunities that open up access to energy for these compute hungry technologies that you guys are looking at?
Yes. We're looking at the entire ecosystem. A quick story. Early days of the internet, I was there. And, we had the same controversies, progress demands energy consumption, right? So, how do we make this sustainable in a way? Certainly the miners, watching and listening, we've had some of them on Bitcoin Brainstorm, are thinking very carefully about this. This is a great opportunity for data centers to locate, near some of these renewable sources. Hydro. There was, I forget the
Eric Hersman in Africa, White African. Yeah.
But also the one upstate New York.
Oh, Grid with Harry.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So we are looking at them. We tend to to stay away from what I would say are bets on pure play commodities and very cyclical, high fixed cost businesses that. But we are looking, especially now that power is so much in the news around it, both AI and Bitcoin. We're, of course, also focusing on utility ecosystems that are, willing to put Bitcoin into their ecosystem so that, when sun and wind have filled up the storage units, they are doing something productive and helping to overbuild sun and wind. Fascinated that, Exxon put mining machines in natural gas fields to prevent flaring and venting even worse. So,
and you mentioned Block before. I thought I saw, is Thomas Templeton here from Block? Is he here? Well, they're competing and hopefully disrupting the duopoly between Bitmain and MicroBT.
Oh, yes.
So there's a lot more innovation that's coming
yes.
to the front. I'm extremely bullish. Parker, one more question?
Two more.
Let's do it. Yep.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Cathie. My name is Marks. I work on an open source wallet called Mutiny. And so you mentioned Block, Coinbase, Robinhood. You say you're looking for the next digital wallet, but we're kind of spoiled here. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Of course, those are public portfolios.
Right.
So that I should have qualified. Yes.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
We're kind of spoiled here because we have Venmo in the United States and other very convenient wallet apps already. What kind of form are you looking for something to take that is, the next digital wallet, Bitcoin wallet that can truly disrupt what we have already and that people will want to clamor onto?
Yeah, we took a lot of lessons from WeChat Pay, and we did analysis of, what that effectively wallet, which incorporated commerce in it, right? What we would have valued each user of that wallet as equity owners. And it was $20,000 per user because it wasn't just all of these financial services. So it's all-encompassing financial services and commerce. Two-sided marketplaces are very interesting. That's why we've got our eyes on Cash App and how that's going to work out. So each of these is coming from a different angle, and really the consumer is going to choose here, right? Is it Coinbase, which is coming from the crypto angle? Is it Robinhood, which has captivated with its UI, which Coinbase does not have in terms of it doesn't have this UI experience. That's really important to consumers. Is it a Robinhood? Is it Cash App? Is that more of a sort of will it become more of an emerging markets play, or will Cash App continue to proliferate? Even through the United States. It started in lower income. I don't know if you know the history there. Started in lower income parts of the country and is making its way around. I don't know if many people have it here, but I think because of Bitcoin, a higher proportion of people in this room probably use Cash App than in other rooms. So we're looking for the everything app, what Elon Musk is talking about. I mean, I wouldn't even put it past Elon with X to figure this out, because he started in payments and sold his company to PayPal, of course. So he's been thinking about this for a while, I know. So the consumer actually will decide this, and so we're just looking at sort of the ingenuity and creativity from these companies and what the consumer is gravitating towards. Does that make sense?
A consumer of one right here, and I love the Mutiny wallet, and so that's my power wallet for everyday Bitcoin use. That's for sure. We got one last question before I pass it to Joe.
All right, one more question. Who we got? Here. Anybody? Oh, you want to ask a question, Kim? Okay.
Nice to meet you, Cathie. I'm Kim from Memphis. We are a Web3 travel platform. I would like to know your opinion about how do you think about the blockchain can change the traditional business service?
Traditional business services?
Yes. Like financial services, the services like travel platform like us.
Oh.
How do you think about that?
Yeah, and actually, this is part of the digital wallet answer. Is in terms of your business, travel will be done in these digital wallets as well. The everything apps. I really do think you should look for that. In terms of traditional financial services, we do think what Chris Bernesky calls now the internet financial system instead of DeFi. We do think that's going to be very disruptive longer term to traditional financial services, peer-to-peer, taking out the middlemen. I mean, if you go into our Big Ideas 2023 and 2024, you will see how many steps there are between a purchase, between the consumer and the merchant, how many toll takers there are along the way. I think we're going to get rid of a lot of toll takers, and we are going to move much more peer-to-peer over time. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. But I think that, the more that Bitcoin in particular goes up sort of leading the way, the more capital, it's like AI, the more capital is going to be attracted into the space and the faster it's going to happen. So I would keep my eye on Bitcoin. The more faster it appreciates, the faster the traditional financial world is going to evolve into this new world, if not disappear.
All right. So we're going to have Joe Kelly come up, say a few words. He's going to make an announcement about a great new orange pill and a great new initiative. But before that, just can everyone give a big round of applause to Cathie and Rod in the Bitcoin Comics.
ARK believes that the information presented is accurate and was obtained from sources that ARK believes to be reliable. However, ARK does not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information, and such information may be subject to change without notice from ARK. Historical results are not indications of future results. Certain of the statements contained in this podcast may be statements of future expectations and other forward-looking statements that are based on ARK's current views and assumptions and involve known and unknown risks and uncertainties that could cause actual results, performance, or events to differ materially from those expressed or implied in such statements.